Sun Tzu, the ancient Chinese military strategist whose thinking has outlasted every empire that tried to ignore it, offered a framework that feels almost uncomfortably relevant to the modern Middle East. He was obsessed, not with destruction, but with the architecture of an enemy's power. And in the US, Israel-Iran conflict, that architecture is not a standing army or a capital city. It is something far more diffuse and far more deliberate. The web the spider builds is not the spider. Yet destroy only the flies caught within it, and the spider simply weaves again. The patient strategist asks not where the threads end, but where they begin. Iran's strategic model is built on what analysts now call indirect power, a constellation of proxy forces, ballistic missile stockpiles, and economic leverage that allows Tehran to project force without ever formally declaring war. Sun Tzu would have recognized this immediately. He spent considerable intellectual energy on the idea that an enemy's true strength lies not in his soldiers, but in the conditions that make those soldiers possible. The Houthis in Yemen, Hezbollah in Lebanon, militia networks in Iraq and Syria. These are not independent actors. They are threads in a deliberate design. And Sun Tzu's first question would be, who is holding the loom? Power that travels through borrowed hands is still power. But it carries a hidden fragility. It depends on the willingness of those hands to keep reaching. Sever that willingness, and the arm behind them grasps at nothing. Here is where Sun Tzu's thinking becomes almost surgical in its application. He believed that the highest form of generalship was not the annihilation of enemy forces. It was the collapse of the enemy's strategic logic before that logic could be executed. For Iran, that logic rests on a core assumption that its proxies will remain willing, its missiles will remain credible, and its economic relationships will remain insulated from consequence. Each of those assumptions is a vulnerability. Sun Tzu would not bomb the missile. He would make the missile irrelevant. By dismantling the political will, the financial pipeline, and the ideological cohesion that gives the missile its meaning. To strike the fortress is to announce your fear of it. The commander who moves against an enemy's alliances, his supply of loyalty, and his belief in his own invincibility. That commander has already won the war the enemy was preparing to fight. And so we arrive at the resolution Sun Tzu would counsel. Not a war of spectacle, but a war of patient, layered unraveling. Expose the proxy networks to the populations they claim to protect. Dry up the financial arteries through precision economic pressure. Offer Iran's regional partners a more compelling alternative to dependence on Tehran. Make the strategy itself the casualty. Sun Tzu understood that the most durable peace is not the one imposed on a defeated enemy. It is the one that emerges when an enemy can no longer imagine a path to victory. That is the end game he would design. The deepest victory leaves the opponent standing but purposeless, his weapons intact, his network silent, his strategy a map that leads nowhere. That is not mercy. That is mastery.